Welcome to our first lesson in Photoshop. I am very much a beginner in Photoshop, and it is another professional quality piece of software, so you could work for many years and not know all of the possible things to do with Photoshop. First, I should point out to find the software on Marquette computers. I'm on my tablet, but on the computers at school, in your all programs list, you will have a folder, Adobe Design Standard, and when you open that folder, the version of Photoshop I'd like you to open is the CS6 version. So Adobe Bridge and Adobe Illustrator, those are two different pieces of software, and we're just in this class going to work with Adobe Photoshop. But there are lots of resources I can provide for you if you decide you want to learn more about Photoshop. Okay, so once you have the software opened, you won't be surprised to see menus at the top. You have an option bar of different tools depending on what you're working on. Down the left-hand side, this is called the toolbox. Some of these tools you probably already recognize. For example, here's the icon we're used to seeing for cropping a photo. There's a paintbrush to put in color. There's an eraser. So we have a text tool. We have two different color choices here for foreground and background. And over on the right-hand side, we have a panel that you may have something different than I have right now. To see another option in the panel, you would go to the Windows menu, so you can see the three things I happen to have selected. Let me uncheck color, and you'll see that that will disappear from the panel, and history. Those are things that I've been using, but for sure you want to see layers. So if you do not have a panel open that says layers, go to the window menu right now and turn on layers. And then the color choices and the history panel, you may or may not want to see those. I'm going to put the history panel back on for sure, because I think that will be interesting. You will see each of your steps. As you do each step, it shows up in the history. So it is the way that you use this software to undo. So Control Z will undo your most recent step, but you might want to step back farther than that, and you could go to the history panel, much like you might do in a Google application. All right, well, probably the best way to learn about Photoshop is to just follow some steps as I do them. And would you please make sure that you do each of these same photo changes, and then when you're ready to save the file, don't save it over the original folder, over the original file. Save it with a name like revised, or with your last name added to the title. All right, so let's go to our file, open, and you can see Control O like always, and find your Photoshop Basics folder. Hopefully in your Photoshop menu. And we're going to start right with Lesson 1 folder. And please choose the very first folder, Too Dark Photo. And you can see that that's not a very usable photo. So one of the many ways that we could use to lighten the photo, we have the background layer, and everything that you do in Photoshop works on layers. So you might have 10 different layers of things that you're working on in a photo, but rarely or never will you actually be making changes to the background. So in order to create a workspace of this photo, we're going to duplicate a new layer. So one of the ways to do that is on this background layer, choose, right click and choose duplicate layer, and you get a dialog box. And what would you like to call it? Would you like to leave it as copy of the background? And let's, for sake of seeing that we can do this, let's call this layer 0 and click OK. And notice that the new layer shows up on top of the previous layers. And if you want, if once you have lots of layers, you can click and drag the order, but the one that's on top is the one that you are working with. All right, so one quick way of many ways to lighten this photo is to make this top layer that we just created a screen. So find this button under your layers panel, find this button that says normal, and it has a pull down for what type of layer we would like this to be, and we're going to choose screen. So let me do that again in case you missed that. I want to go to this normal button and choose to make this a screen. And did you notice that your file already lightened up? If you would like it lighter than that, then let's duplicate layer 0. So let's right click on layer 0 and choose duplicate layer, and excuse me, we could give it a name then. Let's call this one layer 1 and click OK, and the photo got even lighter. So now we have a screen on top of a screen on top of our background. And notice this eye next to each of these is to show us what we're selecting. Okay, I'm happy with the lightness here. I think that looks really nice. Now we have 3 different layers of this photo. So in order to save it as one photo, I'm going to go to the layer menu, and we're going to go all the way almost to the bottom. And now I've got another menu choice that's outside of my screencast window, but you want to go down until you find flatten image. So flatten image, what that means in Photoshop is take all of the layers and combine them into a single layer. So flatten it back into a single layer, and you notice what happened in your layers panel. We now just have a single layer. We're back to a background, and now we're going to save this as our final product. So file, let's do a save as, and I'm going to come around to give you points on this assignment. So leave the title, but click in front of it, and then perhaps put your last name, so that you will see that it's not the original file. It's going to be saved as a copy, but you can leave it in the same lesson 1 folder. All right, so when we click save, and then we get options of how large a file do you want to save this as, and it would depend on your use, by the way. If you're going to save this for web purposes, you might want to make it a small file and have it load progressively. If we want this to be used, for example, when I do the yearbook, we want to keep the highest quality file. So I'm just going to click OK here. You would have your choice for those options depending on your purpose. All right, so now we've got lesson 1 completed. So we could do Control W to close the window, and then let's go back to Control O or File Open, and then let's go to lesson 2. So we're going to go back to Photoshop Basics. We're going to open the folder for lesson 2, and now we're going to do the reverse. Now we're going to open the photo that is too light. And again, notice that we have just the background layer. So we want to create a layer to work with on top of this background layer. So I right-clicked to get a duplicate. I think Control J. Let me try the Control key and J, and notice that that also gave us a copy of the photo, and it named it layer 1. So you might like to remember that Control J option. But right click, I think, is something we do with all programs. So if you don't have a good memory for keystrokes. Okay, now what we want to do, and again, there are many ways that you could deal with this, but let's go to that normal button, and this time let's choose multiply. And as soon watch your screen when you click multiply. So you can see that we are looking at 2 layers here. So it multiplied the 2 layers. So think about that as if you put layer on top of layer and you multiply them together, it's going to enhance each of the features. So we could do when we have layer 1 selected, we could do Control J again, and it will duplicate that layer. And notice that layer 1 copy. And by the way, if you want to change the name of a layer, you can just double click to get the name open. So we could, just like you would change the name of a file, we could change that to layer 2. Generally, I don't think we're going to care about the name of the layers. But notice when I click on layer 2 that it is a multiply. It is a multiply layer. So if you want to continue doing that, you won't see too much difference now as you multiply the layers, but each time it gets a little bit more intense. And I'm going to try one more, Control J, just so you see. And that certainly has solved the problem of the file being too light. And now remember, when you're happy with your options, oh, by the way, let's say that you thought that was too much. We should, if I click on this, couple ways that you could delete. Right clicking is an obvious choice. If I right click on that layer, delete layer is one of the options that comes up. Are you sure you want to delete that layer? I can say yes. So if you do too much, you could right click to delete those. Or I think we have this icon in the lower right corner, if you can see where I'm pointing on the screencast, looks like a trash can. So that would also delete a layer. If you hover over it, it should say delete layer. All right, so when you are happy with your multiplication effort here, then we can go to, before you save, because you want to put all of these layers back into one layer, and that under the layer menu is called flattening the image. So flatten the image to turn it back into a single layer. And then let's go to File, do a Save As, and we're going to keep your results right in the same lesson folder, but do a Save As and then put your name in front so that I can come around to check your results to give you some points for this assignment. And if you want to have that file smaller, but I think it would be okay leaving it just as it is. All right, I can have several things open at once, but that would be confusing. So I can close a window. I can do that under File, Close, or if you remember your keystrokes, Control W closes and Control O opens the next file. So let's press right on to Lesson 3. And Lesson 3, let's choose the yellow gym before photo. And this is something that happens in Marquette High's gym as well. That everything gets a very yellow tint in the gymnasium. So let's see an interesting option that we could use to make this color be a bit more natural so the photo doesn't look so yellow. And I think this is one of the times when I don't need to work on a layer. Let me find out. If I go to the Image menu, choose Adjustment, and Curves. So Image menu, Adjustments, Curves. And I'm going to drag this over into my screencast capture window. Notice there are 3 eyedroppers down here. And let me just hover so you see this one is what you would click on if you want to sample a color that should be black. The middle one is selecting a color that should be gray, and the third one selecting a color that should be white. So if I hover there, you'll be able to see that. And we're going to click the middle eyedropper here, and then we're going to go over to our photo, and now that eyedropper, we want to line it up. The middle one is to set what should be a gray color. So I'm going to choose this line here at this sideline. If I choose that as wanting it to be gray, or here we've got the steps going up the bleachers might be a spot. So if you get your eyedropper on a spot that you would like to be gray, and now get ready to watch what happens here. When I click the eyedropper, did you notice a change in the photo? So we could try this for a different color. So now when I clicked in that black line, so definitely looking a lot less yellow. Um, I'm actually going to close this. You might that worked perfectly fine, but you might still want this to be less yellow. I'm just going to close this and open it again to show you another option that I personally think works better in this one, and that was to go to Image, Adjustment, Curves, and I think I'm going to choose the third eyedropper for white. And I'm going to, because there's a lot of white here, so I'm going to click on this girl's sock here that I want to be white. And then let's click OK. And let's see if you think that removed some of the yellow tint. So it's okay that the floor is yellow. We just don't want the whole uh, image to look yellow. So let's go back to Adjustments, Curves, and you could try a couple of these. So let's do the black, and let me click on one of the shorts here. And till you see which one you want, which of these choices you like. So let's go back to gray. I think I liked that one. Whoops. And now doing too many of them in a row here, you can see that the curves doesn't work so well if I do one after the other. I got kind of goofy colors now. Okay, so no problem. I'm just going to close, Control W, save it, no. And I'm going to open it back again. So of those choices, under Image, Adjustment, Curves, whichever one you liked best. I think maybe I liked the gray option when I clicked in this baseline here. So notice where my eyedropper is going into this line. I'm going to set that as my gray color. And then I'm going to choose OK. And I think that color adjustment looks pretty nice. And I only have this background here, so I don't have to flatten this image. So I can just go to File, Save As, and then I'm going to put my name in front so I know that this is a revision of the original file. And yes, you can use that file size. All right, I think we can get one more in at least here. So I'm going to close and I'm going to open. I'm going to go to Lesson 4. Oops, and I missed it. Back to Photoshop Basics. Lesson 4, a backlit photo. And you can see there's some sort of old building here or castle. Not a very good photo. So the problem is that all the light was in the back of the photo. So if you took a picture of something in front of a window, you might have backlighting. So one way, again, there are others, but let's go to the image adjustment options again. And this time let's choose shadows and highlights. And did you see something happen to the photo right away? I'm going to close so that you see what happens. I didn't do anything. So were you watching this change? Because it happened immediately. Image, adjustments, shadows and highlights. And now if you watch kind of the amount of the photo that's showing here, when we get here, we automatically get a preview. So if I turn off preview, there's a good way for you to see how much had actually happened. So now let me turn preview back on. And now you can decide with these sliders how much you actually want to adjust the shadow and highlights. So you might have a better eye and you might have more time to play with this. So you can see what's happening here. The automatic adjustment worked pretty well, just the way that it was, somewhere in the middle. Whenever you get where you would like it to be, you can click OK. And I'm not sure I picked the best. I think it actually looked very nice the very first way that happened. So you can always go back and just do Control W, don't save it. Control O, open it again. And then we did Image, Adjustment, Shadows and Highlights. And I think that it did very well with the default value. So I'm just going to click OK. That actually I think looks better than what I had done with the sliders. So we'll save as and put your name in. Save. All right. Click OK. Control W. Whoops. It will be closed. The document will be closed after. Oh, it's still saving. Sorry, I was a little too fast. All right. And now let's go to the next lesson. Lesson 5. Sorry, I left my Photoshop's basics folder. All right. Fixing a blurry photo. What is an option here? This is definitely a very strange sequence of steps because we first do a step that makes it look quite odd. So first thing I'm going to do is go to Filter, and I'm going to choose Convert for Smart Filter. And it's going to convert it to a smart object. And you'd see that that shows up over here in your history, that you converted it to a smart object. You'll see what that's all about in just a minute. And now I'm going to go to Filters, Stylize, and I'm going to choose the Emboss. And this is only one step here. It's going to do something very strange. And later, if you get to be an expert, you can use these sliders to change, but I'm just going to use the defaults and click OK. And that might look like it's doing a very odd thing, but now we're going to go over to this smart filter layer, and next to embossed you see these up down arrows. Let's choose this, and the blending options here. From the pull down menu here next to mode, I'm going to choose overlay. And there you can see something nice came back again. So we'll click OK. And our photo, I think, definitely got cleaned up. There are some more steps that I'll give you a handout you can read about if you want to make even more adjustments. But I think that made a nice improvement. So I am going to save this, and we don't have extra layers here. We did this and it gave us that filter, that smart object. So flatten to get back to just that background. Whenever it has something other than background here, before you can save, go to that layer option and choose flatten the image, and then we can go to File and do our Save As. And again, you got the drill here. Save it as your name. And I think that that's enough for our first video. We've got several more tasks that we want to complete to find out how many different options there are in Photoshop.